understand Agile. They think it's something for those guys.
Scrum at Scale. So today I had an opportunity to listen in to Jeff Sutherland to talk about Scrum at Scale and where it's at today. Now, for me, so I might be late to this, but I found out today at the class in conference today at Global Scrum Meeting that Scrum Alliance and Scrum Org has actually now on Scrum at Scale. Both are split 50-50. So it's a joint partnership, a joint venture on them. And I kind of asked the question of Scrum at Scale today at their booth as to why does it take, why now? It seems like Jeff had all this for a while, and I've been reading about it for a little bit, but why now? So according to Scrum at Scale's person at the booth was basically talking about how it is in Jeff's head and he's been paying attention to it, and now he's got to the point where he can now release it, tweak it enough, I guess. But it's something interesting, and it's something about Scrum, not just Scrum, but you take it. There's two more levels to it, and take a look at it. There is a what we call Scrum at Scale guide that it makes it available for all of us. Now, I don't know the details about it, but from what I can tell in the conference, in the room itself, it resonates on some of the things that I have done before, where we practice some stuff at a higher level, where we get people coming together and working as a team. Now, one of the things that intrigued me was the fact that he had three things that going on here. Let me find those things. Three key things is prioritization of a backlog. Not just a product owner, but there are people above that needs to prioritize those. So he called them the chief product owner, and then there's this notion of chief product owner, right? So prioritization is one. Two is that leadership has to come together and fix the problem. So this notion of Scrum and multiple levels of Scrum, multiple levels of those, right? At the end of the day, there's this leadership that they get together, and I think he called it executive EAT, executive, what was it, executive action? Let me find the notes for it. I had taken so much notes from that one session alone. Oh, so he calls it the executive action team. So that's one of the things, the executive action team. And the notion of that after all the teams had done their scrums, that this information flow back to them, and then as an executive team, what are they going to do? How are they going to fix the problem? Right? And they own it. So that's number two, the executive taking action. And number three is this notion of how we make the Scrum team be accountable for delivering work. So not just the team delivering work, but this notion of accountability of the Scrum that get together, that they too must be held accountable for delivering. So that's a very interesting, maybe it's my first time hearing that, maybe not. I've been talking about how, how do you, who is accountable for delivering? I guess it's the team, yes, it's true, but also how do you measure the performance? So it might be something in there that some of you may think about. So I'm still unsure about that. I haven't gone deep into it, but I'll probably start getting the books and reading about it and kind of get more idea around it, what it is. And he talked about his experiences, and just like the last time I've heard Jeff talk about, he talked about the things he's done, as a fighter pilot, and how they were able to learn, adjust, inspect, and things like that. So this whole notion of all this, that it needs to happen at every level, and where he will go into companies and basically, hey, if you can't deliver, you're fired. So this notion about that, talk about removing organization depth. I'm reading from my notes, making sure I remember it, and talk about culture. About how the culture is more around the the Kaizen thinking, the thinking of the Toyota Kaizen thinking. And what's interesting is one of the slides that he showed that he was talking about how we talk about Kaizen, that really isn't the biggest thing at Toyota. The other portion, and the Kaizen group that did that delivered only 5%, but 95% of the work that was delivered was actually on the teams that does OODA, so the OODA, right, OODA loop. So that's kind of interesting for me to know. So something to take a look at. He has numbers that he thrown out in terms of how much improvement we can get. There's this number that stick out is, how much improvement you can how much improvement you can make from no DevOps to actually doing DevOps, right? Full DevOps, CD, CI, and everything like that. And the numbers he thrown out is 73,000%. 73,000%. So that's a number that's interesting to listen to. And it went on to talk about when we look at a backlog, why is it important for us to measure, and a single measurement that he does, right? He says, okay, if there is nothing else that you measure, but you measure one thing, and this one thing is process efficiency. And process efficiency is basically work time divided by calendar time. Now, I remember looking at these stats before, and this is something that we look at over in the Six Sigma side of the world, and it is true. And what I found was the numbers around 5% are considered good, which is kind of interesting, right? But look at that. Look in terms of that. So if there's only one thing that you measure the process efficiency. So that's something that Jeff Sutherland talked about in this as well. So he had things where he had percentage on this one slide where he talked about work that we do. Oftentimes, based on his experience, he see that 25% of the work that is in our backlog are actually what our customer need. And then the rest is what he terms as junk stories, and then he's this another category called dark work where nobody knows why it exists. So that's an interesting number. So 25% is actually what a customer needs. Something, I'm not sure if you experience it, in my past as I see the backlog, sometimes it is true, sometimes we have certain individuals in the organization that is driving it, that has specific agenda they try to achieve, and it may not be what is our customer need. So things to look out for. So he went on to talk about leaders in terms of what leaders do. So one of the things that he talked about is, as a leader, as a manager, what do? You are there to support the agile ecosystem, right? And that's something that I associate with, and that is true that leaders, yes, you may set a path and you may say, hey, we're going agile, but what can you do to help us be successful? Well, support the agile ecosystem. So Jeff Sutherland confirmed that for me. That's something that really good to hear. For somebody at his level, as with so much experience, this is awesome, right? So one other thing that he talked about is how we should make small improvement steps, and how he says the way to get to what he termed as the I would say the heart of Scrum at scale is double the time with half the team. I think that's what it is. It's double the time with half the team. How do you double the time? So let me get this straight. Twice the work in half the time, all right? So Scrum at scale is about twice the work in half the time. Well, how do you do that? And he shared basically, said most of the time we fail because it takes us too long to make a decision. And here's these numbers and stats that shows that if you were to make the decision faster, your rate of success is actually higher compared to taking a long time to make a decision. and that's very interesting to watch. And so something to look up. I'm sure it's in most of his talks and his slides. I'll see if I can get some of his slides and post it up here. But those are the things that I learned about Scrum at Scale. It does prompt me to want to know more about Scrum at Scale. I thought I had some notion about it, but I'm starting to see more positive turns from Scrum at Scale now. So I was definitely for me to look into that.